Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we are doing a revision of our tier list that we uploaded about a month ago. Obviously a lot of hot takes in there. I will hold my hand up and say I got a few of them very, very wrong. Especially two of the red leaders, which I found quite interesting because red is my kind of forte, is kind of my go-to. So definitely I thought it was worth revising the tier list when we're coming to the end. I mean, I know there's still about another month to go, but I think the best lists have currently already been shared. They've already been shown in tournament reports. So I don't think there's anything that's going to be too wild out here, hopefully, compared to the last list. But I thought we would just do a revision again. So what we're going to do is we'll do it in the same format as before, where we start off with the starter leaders. We're going to go through the green leaders, then red to yellow to blue at the last. And we've already started with the names here on the side. So we have our Z tier list, which are likely going to be tournament winners, most likely will win the event. We have likely top events, which means that they will likely be in the top 8, or it will likely be a larger portion of the top 8 is probably the best way I can describe that. We've got not likely to win events, which means it can top, it just again will likely not win the event. I think that's probably the best way to put these. And then we have rogue, meaning that it's pure pilot dependent. The pilot themselves will literally carry the deck, and it can win, right? That's the thing with rogue decks. Rogue decks can win events, but it's not going to be in a large portion. It will likely just be one or two specific players that can get there. And then we have trash tier. Trash tier being not... I will start off by saying that no leader in Fusion World currently is trash, right? There are ones that are far better than others. There are ones that, like, every deck has already topped events. They've already made top 8. So this is me purely saying that out of all of the leaders, it's arguably the worst, right? That's the way I see this, okay? So we're going to start off with Vegeta in blue. Everybody disagrees, right? There's a lot of... The thing I love about Vegeta more than anything is the debate it causes in the community, right? Nobody can really pick where this leader goes because people that I've played against have played this to the top tier level. I have seen what this deck can do when its pilot is absolutely unreal. But I still think that, I'm not going to say bad pilots, I still think that people who are just slightly less skilled with Vegeta per se can still top events, right? That's the way I see it. The leader itself is absolutely insane. It is great into green for two reasons. One, because it's a 35k leader, meaning it gets over Broly's cushion of 10k, and it gets over Gohan's free 15k, meaning that no matter what, we are drawing out a minimum of one card from hand from both these leaders, right? So I'm going to put Vegeta at likely to top events, right? And there's a reason for that. I still believe he is a tier 1, and I'm throwing up fingers here. I still believe he is like a tier 1 leader. Again, I know that this was probably the most heatedly debated part of my last tier list that people disagreed. But again, I have the benefit of actually seeing this played from the best level. And I've played against multiple people in God rank who were in the top 50, who were all on Vegeta, and they were piloting it to perfection and slapping me about, right? That is my experience with Vegeta, which is why I still place him up there, okay? And then we have Starter Coup. Starter Coup for me is another one. Starter Coup I ranked poorly originally. I could never find the correct build for it. I believe now that I've got I say I have a build. It's actually Cody Wojciech. Again, apologies if I'm butchering your name, buddy. But his build, and I watched his video that was on Phil Plays TCG. What an insane video it was. It was insanely insightful. They talk about the playlines, they talk about the benefits of this card, they talk about the benefit of playing 3 costs rather than 2 costs. You know, for the green matchup, for the yellow matchup, all of this, they go into like really intrinsic detail on why the decisions are being made. And honestly, because of that video, I started playing Starter Coup, and I copied the list more or less. I think I maybe changed 1 or 2 things here or there. I'm not even sure if I did, but Starter Coup for me is the best red leader, and I will hold my hand up to that. I initially said that U7 was Z tier. It's not. It's really not. It's good at going low to the ground and good at going 20k, 20k, 20k. When you get into the realms of 25k, green just out-resources you. It will outgrind you across the match. By the time that you can put out 2 or 3 2-drops on the board, they can field the Broly. You have no easy removal for the Broly, and U7 specifically. Whereas I think that Starter Coup having just the defensive 5k on both sides is very, very good. The defensive 5k offensively and defensively is insane. And when you start playing 25k battle cards and 30k battle cards, which now my list includes, they're very, very easy to defend without you having to spend a card from hand, or at least once per turn, not a card from hand, which is very, very strong. So I think that Starter Coup is definitely the best red leader. That I will say. There's not really too much more to cover on that I'm not going to cover in Beerus and U7, so I'm just going to move on to Broly now, and I want to try and make this video a lot shorter than we did the last tier list, because the last tier list went on for nearly like 30 minutes or 40 minutes. It was a long video. So we'll jump into Broly now. Broly, for me, is still Z tier. It's still likely going to be the monster of set 1. And set 2 terrifies me because of the Senzu Bean. Having a 30k base leader is going to be absolutely stupidly difficult to deal with. But I think that in set 1, Broly and Gohan are both tied for probably the most wins, I would argue, across leaders for most of the events I've seen reports on. But 25k leader, meaning that most matchups, most decks struggle because they field a lot of 20ks. It's just inherently what they do. You have to spend cards from hand to get up to equal power, meaning that you're basically trading a card for a card every time you're looking to attack. And Green has a great track record of, I can just use my cantrips defensively to stall my awaken. So in Broly, I can just choose not to awaken before turn 4 or 5 if I want to. Obviously depending on the situation, but it means that I keep my draw power up. And every time I'm playing a cantrip, it's replacing itself, so I am losing no cards from hand and I'm defending 1 life every turn, right? That's essentially what Broly's doing when they're a 15k leader. And then once they get into 25k, they've more or less out-resourced you at that point. When they are a 25k leader, they will be at 6 energy, meaning they have the androids available to just pop 2 cards on board and put pressure on, or to even swing at something else and put pressure on. Broly is a monstrosity of a leader. It's so good. I personally have really bad luck with this. I'm putting this in Z tier, even knowing that I am on the biggest losing streak with Broly. But that's just because I'm not a good Broly player. That's all it is. But I recognize game. I understand that Broly is definitely, arguably, the best leader in the set, right? We'll go into the next leader being Frieza. When I say arguably the best, this is the other one, Frieza. Frieza for me is still the best leader in the game. In set 2, it could still very well be the best leader in the game. But we're talking set 1 here, so I'm just going to talk about specifics in this set. Frieza can go tall, it can go wide, it can go for the long game, it can go for the short game. It can do everything. If you're playing green, and you like green Gohan or green androids, let's say, you can go at them with the Raccoon, with the Ginyu package. You can just go absolutely insane. 20ks, 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 20ks on repeat, and they cannot deal with it, right? If you're playing against Broly, you play the slower game and you go tall. You play your coolers, you play your 40k, you play your 5-drop. Like, you have so many other options to play into Broly. I think Frieza, generically speaking, just from all the tools that Yellow has and all the tools that all the colors have, I think that Yellow and Frieza, they just go together perfectly. They just really do. And like I said I'm going to focus this on set 1, but the reveals so far from set 2, which there will be a video coming out most likely tomorrow, on the set 2 reveals, Frieza is going to be a monstrosity. It really is. I don't think there's going to be any deck that can realistically take on Frieza to that level. And especially when I look at future-proofing the leader, or sorry, future-proofing the deck, I think any yellow tools are just inherently busted in this leader. And I think that this leader's going to be around. It feels like Masters in set 1 Golden Frieza all over again, where the leader's going to be around for 20 sets unless they do something about it. Yeah, the leader's absolutely snapped. He has the best matchup generically, more than any other leader into all other leaders. There's not one leader specifically that has a great matchup into every single leader like Frieza does. Broly is great into most leaders, apart from maybe 2 or 3, which I can get into later. But yeah, I think Frieza generically just has the tools to deal with every leader, and I think that that's why I'm putting it at the top of Z tier. So we'll go into the green list next. Right. Okay, I'm gonna have to do it. Android 17 and 18, I am admitting defeat, is here. Right. I hate this. I absolutely hate this. This is my baby. This is my darling. This is my everything when it comes to set 1 Fusion World. On the client. I don't play it in the physical game, but on the client. I absolutely love Android 17 and 18. But I'm gonna concede the point that while I say not likely to top events, it can top events for sure. It just doesn't have as good a match into these two leaders. These two leaders specifically are a huge problem for Android 17 and 18. With Yellow Frieza being able to go so fast, you can't get to your later turns without being under serious pressure. Broly just out-resources you on repeat. There's nothing you can do. It's just, you lose the game. You do ramp better than any other green leader with this leader. It just doesn't have as good a match. Your tools available to you are not as good. The Saiyan package, I'm admitting defeat, is better, right? I hate that. I absolutely hate that I'm saying this. But Android 17 and 18 is still an insanely strong deck, and I will go to my grave saying this. It's an insanely strong deck. Do you know what? I'm going to put it in Rogue, right? I believe that 17 and 18 can win events. I believe it can. I'm going to die on this hill, right? I believe it can win events, but it needs the right pilot. It needs an absolute solid pilot who knows the deck inside out and who knows all of the matchups. And when you get that pilot on that leader, it can win events. And that's what I'm going to say, right? We're going to move on before I start crying because this has upset me more than you know. And then we've got Green Gohan. Green Gohan is Z tier. It is also Z tier. The reason why I put this Z tier is because out of all of the green leaders, this has the best match into the other green leaders. Your inherent capability of going to 35k offensively and defensively means that you are a massive threat to Broly, right? You just are. Broly can't deal with 35k's, it's its worst number. It's like most leaders, 30k is the sweet spot when it comes to attacks. Gohan will out-resource Broly. Now, Gohan though, I will say this, is the end of Z tier only because it has a worse matchup into the rest of the colours than any of the Z tier leaders, right? But it is still Z tier. It is still absolutely insane. It has and it will continue to win events. The next set, the Saiyan stuff that's coming out, again, is going to make this leader an absolute powerhouse still. Yeah, I can't really say more about it. Gohan is ridiculously strong. It can tie on power with Vegeta for its 35k. It draws out a super combo, basically, with every attack into a 20k leader. It's absolutely nuts, right? And it's the reason why it's topping events. And again, it is pilot dependent because you have to be smart about your ramps and when to do it, and choosing your options and making your play lines. But Gohan is definitely Z tier, right? We had it at I think it was like second or third in A tier last time, so likely to top events. But no, this is a Z tier leader. It will win events, and it will win events consistently like it has been so far. Then we've got Beerus. Beerus is A tier for sure. My last tier list, I put a lot of time into Beerus where I didn't really understand what the strategy was. The strategy at that point was, okay, so we're going to control the board. We know that that's the strategy. The strategy was always control. The issue that I had, though, was that you were too slow. You weren't quick at other things. Yes, you crit your opponent, and then you field cards that remove other cards while boarding your own. Yes, they can do that, but my thing for me with Beerus was into green matchups in particular, they would stall on those crits. They would just combo a 10k and just get out the crit every time. And that was a problem, because when you're not getting the value of the crits and then, yes, they're dropping a card, which is essentially the same thing, but it's also not because they're on 8 life. You have to put them at 0. There is no other win condition in this game. There's no mill, there's no essential hand destruction, there's no other way to win a match. There is burn, but again, it's dealing damage to 0, right? All of these strategies play in favour of green out-comboing crit leaders. That's just what it does. So yeah, so Beerus for me was, at that time, was a struggle because I didn't really understand how to build the list. I still am not there, 100%, I'm definitely not there, but what I will say though is that Beerus' ability to control other leaders and other boards is insane. It can deal with Frieza very well, Beerus, I personally feel. I think it can deal with it very, very well. We have all the removal in the world. They're going to spend, if you go the Ginyu route, they spend cards from hand to build a board, right? We then spend 1 or 2 cards from hand to clear their board, and then they have to either rebuild it or go tall at that point, and it puts them in that position where they have to think about it. Yeah, I think Beerus honestly has a great matchup into a lot of leaders. I think it struggles a lot into Broly. I think it struggles into some green in those earlier turns. It purely depends on who you're playing, right? If your opponent's smart and they're going to go, well, I don't want to take a crit from life because you have to put me to 0, they're just going to throw a random 10k out there. They don't care. We'll just not take crits for a couple of turns. And because we're a crit leader and we're not drawing, we're also slowing down, meaning that it plays into their hands as well. But other than that, that's my only gripe with Beerus, is that the green leaders are a struggle for it. Maybe not Android 17 to an extent. I do think that it has a good matchup in Android 17, but likewise Android 17 can combo off 10k androids and then ramp them later on. So again, it's purely pilot dependent, I think, on who you're playing. I think it comes down to for Beerus, but Beerus is still definitely going to top events. It has won events. I think it still can win events. I just think that as far as red leaders go, I think Starter Coup is generically just better. It has a generic better matchup into the rest of the format than Beerus does currently, and I think that will continue in set 2. And then we go U7. Right, U7 is a weird one for me. It's still topping events, it's still a good leader. I don't get the value out of this leader that I do out of these two anymore, right? That's why I'm putting it at the back end of likely to top events. I don't really like it that much anymore. I was so hype on U7, I really was. But the more I've played Starter Coup, the more I've fine-tuned the build, the more I've watched that video from Phil Plays TCG with Cody, the more I started to understand what Red wants to do into the rest of the matchups, and this does it worse than the other two leaders. That's the only thing I can say. Yes, we can field 20ks for fun and just beat down 20k, 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 but we're not fielding criticals, meaning that we can field criticals, but realistically, it's a worse build. But 20k leaders are just going to take that damage, and then guess what? When you're at 7 cards in hand, they're at 13, 14. Now you've lost. You can't win that. You're not recovering. They will out-resource you for the next 3 turns until they start fielding Brolys, and then you're dead, right? That's it. So, personally, I think it's still a very good deck, and next set, I am very confident that this will either be here or here. And watch this space, right? The U7 packaging, or the U7 additional cards coming in set 2 are absolutely insane. The only problem for me, though, is that the ones that make it insane are also playable in this leader, because this is also U7. So, the Android 17 from set 2 that can buff your leader 5k, I would rather have it on this all day long than have it on this. For me, it's still going to be up there. These two are the potential movable objects. I think that they will potentially either both or one of them will be in Z tier next set for sure. But I think for set 1, I think that positioned, it is a still really, really strong deck. You just will lose grind matches. And green is a grind, Vegeta is a grind, yellow can be a grind. Red uniquely is in a great place to deal with yellow, even with the current builds. But again, the draw package that's in Frieza compared to the other yellow leaders is so strong that they don't care. If you start clearing the board, they're just going to start re-establishing, and the control just comes over again. So yeah, so I think U7 is, I think this is a fair place. It was either going to be here or the top of here, but it has topped events, and I think it has also won events. And again, I think it's maybe just pilot dependent. That could be what it comes down to. So we'll go into yellow now. Cooler. I'm going to put not likely to top events. It has topped, and it can top 8. I just think that it's not as strong as people think it is. I think that it doesn't draw, which is kind of the opposite of what yellow wants to do. For me, it can be strong, and it definitely is one of these decks, again, that is pilot dependent, but I think even the best pilot on this leader will still struggle into the rest of the meta. That's the way I see it. So there's not really too much I'm going to comment on when it comes to Cooler. The next set doesn't really impact it a lot, realistically. Yeah, so I think that that's safe to say that it's. I'm fine with putting it there. Ginyu. I'm putting Ginyu in trash. Sorry, Jamie, if you're watching. I'm really sorry. But the more I've played against Ginyu, the more I've understood the leader and what it wants to do. I am a red player, meaning that inherently I have all the answers in the world to control their board. I think Ginyu has good matchups into certain things, like Green Gohan. His pace is too quick, it can't deal with it. It has a good matchup into Android 17 for the same reason. It also I would say it has a good match into both blue leaders, I think, but blue being able to bounce back your cards, meaning that you have to spend energy to re-establish them, it's meh for me. It's one of those ones that's meh, right? But yeah, that's all I can really say about Ginyu. Ginyu is insanely strong, don't get me wrong, but the next set's not going to help it either. There's not a lot of... I don't think there's any Ginyus from the next set, and I don't think that you realistically are going to play much of anything else from the next set, apart from maybe the secret rare. But again, it costs 6. You're not doing that in Ginyu. It's completely against your strategy. It makes no sense. So, I think Ginyu is trash, right? That's the way I'm going to put it. We're going to go into Goku Black. Goku Black is going to go in one of two positions for me, right? I'm either going to put it in likely top, or I'm going to put it in rogue, and I think I'm going to put it in rogue. The reason being, this leader is very good, right? It is a very, very good leader. The blue package that you can include in it is also good, is definitely good. I just don't think it's as good as the value you get out of Vegeta. And Vegeta gets all the benefits without the negatives of it not drawing on the Awakened side. The critical is nice and all, it's just not going to change the fact that, again, green combos out of these attacks for fun, they don't care. For me, it's purely pilot dependent, and again, I have seen Goku Black played at the top level. I played against, I think it was off stream. I was kind of gutted actually. I played against the ranked 12th or 13th player at the time on the ladder. He was on Goku Black, and he whooped my ass. 3 Goku Black 6 drops on play, like on the board by the end of that match. And I think I was playing. I think I was on Broly actually. I think I was playing at the time. There's nothing you can do against that. It's just you're fielding too much pressure. You can't deal with it. Yeah, but Goku Black, when played right, is played very, very sweetly. But my experience is I don't have enough experience to know whether or not they just drew into God draws, or whether or not this is a consistency that this happens a lot, which is the only reason why I'm putting it in rogue. So that's the only thing that's stopping me from putting it up here. And then the last one being Trunks. This leader for me is a pain in my ass, right? And what I mean by that is I don't know what I make of this leader, right? It's not here. It's definitely none of these top 2, but it's whether it falls into one of these 3, right? Not likely to top events, meaning it can top events. I have seen it top events. But I don't know what it is about Trunks. It just plays into the entire opposite strategy of what Blue inherently wants to do, meaning you want to stay around that 8-card hand, right? Trunks, if you play Mai, you're putting yourself on the back foot on that from like turn 2 already. It's, you know, you're going to end up with 10, 11, 12 cards in hand, meaning that a lot of the cards you want to play to get to that 7 energy sweet spot, it's you're going to have to spend things inefficiently to get there, which is what I don't like about it. Vegeta does something similar, although Vegeta for me is a leader that you actually want to defend from turn 1. I don't think you want to awaken before turn 4, whereas Trunks' effect is so good, you kind of want to awaken in that earlier turn, because if you're playing yellow or red, you want to bounce the cards back to hand because you want them to spend the energy to re-establish, meaning that they don't have a board, right? But Vegeta does not exactly the same, but with it being a 35k leader offensively is huge. But when you can defend and you go into the long game with Blue, when they start getting to that 5, 6, 7 energy, Vegeta they just will out-resource you for sure. And I think Vegeta is better than Trunks. I think it's definitely better than Goku Black, but whether I think Trunks is good is another question. I've been umming and on with this one since I actually loaded up this tier list. I was like, where the hell am I going to put this? But if I'm being honest, I'm gonna go here, right? I love the leader. I think that Blue's future could revolve around this leader because of its ability to send back battle cards 3 or less, right? This has a great match into red, in particular, I think, because we can just start bouncing those 0k cards back to hand. The 0k Gokus, I should say. It's going to get slightly less powerful with that new Gohan SR, but personally I think that this is really, really... It's really bad in this meta. I think that that's the best way I can put it. When I look at all other leaders here, I cannot honestly say that Trunks has a decent match into any of them, right? That's the way I look at it. I think Ginyu bodies it. I think Goku Black just out resources you generically because you can only bounce 3 or less, whereas I'm going to play 4 or less, 4 costs or higher, so it's like they don't really care. 17 and 18, you're not quick enough to deal with 17 and 18. Cooler, again, maybe it has a decent match into Cooler, I don't know, I don't have the experience. It doesn't have a decent match into U7, doesn't have a decent match into Beerus, does not have a decent match into Starter Coup. Yeah, for me this is trash. That's the only way I can put it, right? It's a good leader, meaning that future releases could bring this leader back to prominence because of the effect of being able to bounce 3 or less cards. Sorry, cards of 3 or less. But right now, I just don't think that set 1 is where Trunks should be. So I'm going to put it in trash for that reason. And I feel that that's the same with Ginyu. I think that Ginyu caught everybody by surprise with the aggro in the earlier stages of this year. Or sorry, earlier stages of Fusion World. Now it's been figured out, and I don't think it's as scary as it used to be. And I think ultimately that's what it comes down to. So these are the reasons for the trash picks, but I'm much happier with this tier list than I was last time when I actually uploaded the tier list. I know I said in the video, I was like, yeah, this is a solid tier list, I'm happy with it. There was still a few outliers for me, but I think now that I've got the experience of like 400 games, something like that, in the client under my belt, maybe 400 games, I feel like I'm in a much more informed position to make decisions like this, which is why I've gone with what I've gone with. As always, guys, this is an open discussion, so if anybody in the comments wants to put, you know, a disagreement or an agreement, if there's anything that people want to talk about, I'm always open for discussions on this. But yeah, this is my list currently, and I think that for the rest of set 1 this will not change. I think that this is a fair list. I think again set 2 is going to shake up everything. So we will likely do a leader tier list for set 2, as well as going over set 2 reveals, which I've still to record. But yeah, this is the revised tier list for now. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I hope you agree with what I'm saying. Again, I know that there's going to be some discussion in and out of here. You know, I'm probably shitting on people's favourite leaders here, but it's not what it's about. I know that every leader here can win and can top events. There's probably already been events around the world where every leader has won or topped at some point or got top 8. But for me, going into the next set and at the end of this format, this is, for me, I think this is a completely fair view. But again, feel free to agree or disagree and put it in the comments, hit me up. I'll obviously respond when I can. But I hope you've enjoyed the video, guys, and I hope that this is a much easier take on the tier list than it was the last time. And if you like the video, please subscribe as well, and I will also see you guys in the next video. Peace.